When I was a lad, most schoolboys collected engine numbers, but we were mad about collecting names of locomotives, like these. Namers, we call them, or like this one, the Ellerman Lines, a Merchant Navy class loco, which was built as late as 1959, and so much more romantic to give it a name than to call it by its boring number, 35029. My passion was a train called the Red Rose that ran between Liverpool and London, and I used to stand on an iron bridge collecting the namers as they thundered by. This particular one, the Atlantic Coast Express, ran down to Bournemouth and then to the West Country. Well, on this programme, we're joining two men, Shakespearean actor Peter McEnery and the artist David Shepherd, famous for his locos and his African wildlife, who, just like me, are schoolboys who never quite grew up.
David Shepherd has for many years been associated with the East Somerset Railway, so it was quite a surprise when I bumped into him one day on the Severn Valley Railway.
This is almost as big as British Rail, Severn Valley, isn't it?
Well, this is now, what, 60 miles from Kidderminster
Yes,
to the bridge and
all the way to Kidderminster.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
An incredible setup.
It's
They've got 60 coaches.
60.
Oh, we've got 6 on my railway. That's enough of a headache, but it's 60 coaches. Just, I don't know how they cope, but they're so professional. It's absolutely incredible.
And this is open all the year round now, isn't it?
I gather so. Yes, I've only been here twice, but I just thought I'd have a day off.
But do you
It's amazing who you meet on steam railways.
how long is your railway?
Well, it's not mine, first of all. That's the trouble, you see. The trouble with East Somerset is that everybody thinks I'm a millionaire, and it's my railway. Whether I'm a millionaire or not is debatable, but it's certainly not my railway. And it's 2.5 miles, which is peanuts compared to this one.
But small is beautiful.
I think so, yes. I mean, these chaps have got a totally new, a completely different ball game altogether.
Yes.
I mean, whatever the mileage is here, it's a huge commercial business, which it has to be. It's got to be run as a...
But what is it that starts this addiction now? Is it to do with being of a certain age?
Well, did you collect train numbers when you were small?
No, I didn't collect train numbers. That is strange. People always think it's to do with collecting train numbers. I didn't collect train numbers, but I do remember in my youth, of course, it was the age of steam. And as most people will admit to, it is the evocation of youth in terms of the senses, smells and sounds.
Right. Every little boy wants to be an engine driver. If we go to the toy shops in the 1980s,
Yes.
90% of the train sets have got steam trains in them.
And most of the children's toys and books, for tiny little nippers, the trains are always shown in the steam profile.
Thomas
Yes,
the Tank Engine.
Indeed, yeah.
Thomas the Tank Engine is not a diesel locomotive.
No.
If he was, none of the kids would buy it. I don't think so.
No. No.
It is amazing, that.
Another thing was that when you went on a train journey as a kid, when you were taken to your destination, to the seaside or wherever, it was always customary. You'd get out of the train and you would go to the cab and you would thank the driver.
Thank the driver. You never do that now.
No. So it was always a great thrill, wasn't it? That was part of it.
It's those little things we're keeping alive, you see, on the East Somerset, or this one, the Severn Valley. It's the, for instance, we had a 17-year-old girl, I asked how old she was, riding on one of our trains behind Black Prince last summer. And she said, "Oh, look, Daddy, there's smoke going past the window." She'd never seen smoke going past the window of a train. It's all diesel, you see. And she said, "Oh, there's the clickety-click of the rails." That's all gone, too, because on British Rail it's a continuous wail. So you don't get all these lovely nostalgic things, and we're keeping them alive. That's why we do it.
They are very close to living things. They murmur, they mutter, they breathe, and are very individual. The good thing about engines is that they are good to look at from a distance. The even better thing is they are wonderful to drive.
Yeah. Now you water this coal a bit, do you? Yes, we do. To cut the dust down. There we go, lovely fire.
Yeah, nice dry rail today, so we're all right.
Yeah. No slipping.
No slipping. We're slightly uphill out of that road. The bridge north's different because it's so hot, not so steep. You know,
So you really have to know your road well, don't you?
You do, yes.
Yeah.
You know that's right. That's what it's all about. It's experience, the working of the engine up and down on a regular basis, the driving. Once you know the road, you know where you can, you know, just about how much steam to give it.
So you'd know this road with your eyes shut, I should think.
It's different in the dark.
Yeah.
Completely different.
Yeah.
There's no light, so there's very few landmarks.
Now, if we want to put more water into the boiler, we open the injector, don't we?
The steam valve.
The steam valve.
You've got your water valve.
Yeah.
Then your steam valve. And then just slightly crank
And the water and the steam combine in the injector.
Goes up into the boiler.
Yeah.
Through the pipe.
Right.
It ain't too bad for water or steam at the
No,
moment.
and we've got a good pressure on the gauge.
That's right.
Just under.
So you could probably, Pete, if you want to have a go and put in the injector on.
I'll put the injector on because there's more water in.
We've got a 15-mile-an-hour restriction, okay? That's it, just crack it, just a touch. A little bit, go on. Where's your strength? Some bit what? No, it is. Go on, that's it. Go on, a little bit lower now. That's more than the full. Now that's it, that's enough.
You can hear it sing, can't you?
Yeah, we were working a light engine diesel back from Kidderminster one evening in the summer. Going down through Arley, when I was telling you about these occupational crossings to the farmers, they also use them for moving their sheep from one field to another. And on an evening, you know, we don't usually run trains. We were coming round the bend at Arley the one evening and there were about 40 sheep in the middle of the track. I believe it. Needless to say, I panicked, put the brake on. The farmer panicked, he ran one way, the sheep ran the other. We went right in the middle of the lot. We didn't kill one, so we were very lucky. But what we do, if we do kill a sheep, we have to pay. But, you know, so much per sheep, £10 or whatever it is.
Yeah, but you weren't doing more than 50 miles an hour, were you, Don?
No, no,
Exactly.
No, certainly not. Another little occupational crossing for a farm. Okay. So we have to keep our eye on them. Another crossing there, fisherman's crossing. You get the old fishermen dashing across in the cars, wait to catch the fish. We've had once, I nearly hit one. Very close, that one. So we have to be careful with them.
And we've still got £200 on the...
Still on the 200, Tomkins. Done a fine job on the old... All on yourself, of course.
Well,
I mean, you know, you're getting better.
Good firing, you see.
Yeah, but you'll have to get rid of those pink shots. Oh, no, I'll get rid of the pink there. You're getting better, anyway. We're all right. Another crossing here.
Right, I'm going to whistle again.
On the whistle again, please.
on the fireman's duty, water, steam. Yeah. You've got your signals, you've got your crossing. Yeah. And also you have to occasionally look back just to make sure the train's still with us. Still with you, yeah. You never know. Well, I'll have a look, I'll check. If you would, please. Yeah, most of it is anyway. They're all still coming out. Yeah.
It is not all exhilaration and excitement, though. Back at the engine sheds, there is the little matter of the fire to be disposed of.
At the end of the day, this is what you have to do, is drop the fire. It always seems a pity, doesn't it? Look at that beautiful fire. I'm just going to drop it into the pit.
Have you ever had breakfast on the footplate?
No.
Magic.
Ambition.
Yeah, on Black Prince. Have breakfast one day.
Cook it on the shovel.
Yeah, you put the lard on the shovel, put it in, melt it and swivel the lard off again. Break the eggs, sausages, fried bread. On the magic. In 5 minutes you've got the best breakfast ever.
The best it's ever tasted.
Best ever.
Yep.
The engine sheds have a character and atmosphere all of their own. There is a strange sense of stillness, silence, and almost reverence.
Yes, but there was also I don't know who it was who said it, a famous picture, and they referred to the engine shed, all the light and the smoke filtering through it when the engine's at rest. It was like cathedrals of steam.
Yes, I've heard that expression. I've never discovered who said it.
No, I don't
But
know.
it's exactly what they're like, yes, because there's an artist, like a potty when I was used to be able to go into the old steam sheds in the old days. This is exactly like the old days, actually, with all the filth all over the place. Lovely filth. Yeah, it's gorgeous to steam into. That's all the muck you get under the shoes.
We're appropriately dressed for all this.
Yeah, but it's lovely. I mean, shafts of sunlight and, as I say, playing on pools of oil on the floor. And Rembrandt would have gone potty, you know, if he'd been alive in the steam age. Rembrandt would have come into a place like this and painted.
He'd have set the easel
I know
up.
he would. I know he would.
Now, this is wonderful. Now, this really sums up, doesn't it, the description, Cathedrals of Steam. This must have been painted on site. You must have had to go to the location. Where was this done?
No, actually, this is a fictitious steam shed. I wanted to portray the typical BR steam shed at the end of steam with all the things falling out, holes in the roof and muck all over the place. That is actually Black Prince, because I wanted an appropriate engine in my shed.
Well, I wouldn't have dreamt of suggesting it was any other
And the Green Knight. That's my Green Knight, too, the other engine I bought. But it is a fictitious picture, and it was painted in the studio. You can't put a picture like this size, on location, in the shed, because the wind, first of all. Every steam shed was a howling gale around every engine, and then it went straight for the painter, and the whole canvas was shaking like this. You just couldn't do it.
So you just took sketches and
I took sketches, I took photographs at the end of steam, but most important of all, in enabling me to do these big studio pieces, I took working sketches like this one. And these actually mean much more to me than the big studio finished pieces like the one you've just seen. That was painted in Guildford Shed, about 4 days before Guildford Shed closed. That buffer beam, it took me a day and a half to paint that buffer beam, because I don't think I've ever painted anything so difficult, because the colours in that buffer beam.
see the red coming through.
Red, blues, greens, greys, everything. And colour coming through colour.
Yes.
More, you know, you put paint on, that little bit there, a bit too blue, a little more red, so put a little more red in, and the blue will show through the red, and you get one colour showing through another one. And it was such an exciting challenge to paint that, and no money in the world could buy that. See, because that was a true colour note, which was done in the feverish excitement of the last moments of steam from life. Every brush mark of that was done on the spot. like these ones. I got quite well known in Guildford Shed, Nine-Elm Shed, because I got to know all the railway men. I mean, this one is just a mess. Didn't matter about the shape of the engine. I wasn't interested in that. The shapes don't matter. The camera can do that. But I remember
it's the atmosphere of the smoke and the steam.
That's right.
The light.
The atmosphere was about a foot thick, you know, the smoke and the dirt and the muck all over the floor. But the sun had suddenly come out when they, you know more about engines than I do. What do they do when they take the engine out of the shed? They open the...
Drain cocks.
Drain cocks, that's right. They'd fill the whole shed with smoke. And then the sun came out and came through all that smoke. There it was. And I just bashed the paint down in about 10 minutes. Never mind about the shape, as I've said, it didn't matter. There was a tender there of another engine. There was another engine in the distance.
But this and the previous painting, you would use for sketches for what? For a larger subject?
See, if ever I have time and I'm not painting tigers and elephants for people, I'm dying now to paint another big studio set piece, like On Shed that you saw starting. Yes. And if I suddenly think, well, I want some sun coming through masses of smoke, there it is. I'll pick this out of the
That's
colour,
the reference.
blow all the dust off it, and have that beside me, because I know that that is true colour to the best of my ability. This one actually is real memories. This is like Bridge Shed.
Willesden Shed. This is just like Bridge North, with the lamps and the skylight.
Yeah.
Now these are Black Fives locomotives.
Yep.
Which was the locomotive that pulled the train that we were travelling on.
Absolutely. Who knows? That Black Five might be the Black Five at the Severn Valley yesterday.
Indeed.
When we went to the Severn Valley. This actually is. There are a lot of little touches in this which remind me of the Bridge North loco shed. The what do you call them? The skylight in the roof. Skylight broken. And all the shaft of sunlight was coming through and playing on the engine. These lovely subtle colours. Or if they weren't broken, they were covered in 6 inches of soot and muck, so you couldn't see anything. This was 1955. I finished my training, and I didn't have any commitments in those days, no family, and no commitments to paint elephant training. And I had the time, and I spent about a month painting 5 railway pictures, 2 in this place, and BR bought all 5. They bought 5 after the 6th. This is the last one they didn't buy, thank God, because I've kept it. And they paid me £60 for each of the paintings. They're all hanging in the National Railway Museum, I think. No. But this one, thank God I kept it, because it's a record again, you see, of those early days of steam. Yeah, the end of...
Why didn't they buy this one?
Because they didn't want it. They preferred the other one. Because
it had a light bulb missing.
Yeah, and this engine, you see, it had do not... They were marvellous, the railway men. They knew that I was going to spend about a week painting this, because there's a lot of work in that. And they were standing behind me, looking over my shoulder while I was doing it to make sure I got it right, too. The detail. And if I didn't get it right, they'd tell me. And they put a do not move in thing on that engine to make sure that I had it all the time I wanted to paint it. They were marvellous. They said, well, we were going to go up to Sheffield with that, but we'll take another one. They were marvellous. And there it is, Willesden Sheds in 1955. That was painted in the winter.
Again on the spot?
Yeah, on the spot.
So, yes.
You cannot imagine the conditions in a steam shed in the winter. I had 5 sweaters on. I was in there for 8 days. I was dead by the time I'd finished. And on one of the days it was actually snowing. The snow was coming through the roof. By the time the snow landed on the ground, it was black, as I was. And on the back of this canvas, there's an inch of soot and BR muck and everything. It's got a bit of history, it really is.
But the ones those are the ones you're fondest of, the ones that you've painted on location.
They mean
those are the ones you don't part with.
They mean much more to me than the studio set piece. Any artist.
But
will say that.
this last one.
Well,
this is
Black Five Country.
Black Five Country.
Yeah.
The famous Black Five Country.
Yeah. Well, no. You see, this is another studio set piece.
Well, that I find hard to believe.
Well, it has to be because, as I said before, you can't paint a canvas that size on location.
But all the atmosphere for that would have been...
The wind, if that caught that canvas, it would take off like a sail. You know, you'd lose it. And one of my paintings actually floated down the River Thames because the wind caught it. And I saw it floating down to Greenwich. No, this is what Stoke-on-Trent looked like at the end of steam.
So this is when? Painted when? Again, 67?
I painted it in 1978.
Yes.
But from the sketches I did at the time...
So the atmosphere that you got from all those other paintings you'd have applied to this?
I think so, yes. Some of the less attractive enthusiasts would nick off
But
everything
off
them.
all the
They'd
number
swipe
plates
everything. I mean, even the whistles off some of the engines were swiped. In Guildford, I remember the shed lobster
Now that would have been where the shed number was.
That was the shed plate.
Plate.
Somebody had nicked it and left a rust mark. Somebody had nicked the number plate, left another rust mark. And it was anonymous because the number on the side of the cab had disappeared months ago under inches of muck. This is how we ended our steam age. Yeah. And this, above all the other pictures, I think, portrays how we chucked our steam age away.
And what was BR's attitude at this time? Were they difficult?
No, I mean, there are obviously people in British Rail who didn't particularly approve of what we were doing because we were trying to keep steam alive. You see, steam was the old image. They wanted to be modern. But generally, they were marvellous. They were, I mean, I remember I was right in the middle of it for this preservation mania when 2 million enthusiasts in Britain suddenly realised that we were throwing away our steam age at incredible haste. We've got to do something about it. And little boys, I remember one boy, I think he was about 9 years old, sent a cheque, or probably notes in a dirty old envelope, 96 quid, plus, this is true, plus 3,000 green stamps. And he wrote to BR, poor old BR, who were trying to run a railway while all this was going on, and said, is this enough for a deposit for a Duchess Pacific? You know, he had no more idea where he was going to put the Duchess Pacific than I knew where I was going to put Black Prince.
You know, we've talked about locomotives being animate and like being alive. But doesn't it break your heart to see them in this condition?
Yeah, well, of course it does, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, but, you know, for me as an artist, it's a funny thing because these engines in this condition are actually more paintable, I think, than shiny engines.
Yes.
Because you've got the willow herb and all the plants. And evocative, because it's full of sadness.
Now, you see, this one is just standing here forlornly, the remains of a Black 5, which is like some kind of skeleton of a prehistoric animal. But this locomotive is by no means condemned. I mean, this is here for its, like, equivalent of an MOT, isn't it?
Absolutely. This is the moment you have to face when you get into this business of preservation. It's happened to me now with Black Prince.
But it looks daunting.
It is.
Yeah.
It's frightening. But an engine has to have its MOT, fails it, and you have to take it apart.
Yes.
And this gives you an idea of just what is involved.
Yes.
I mean,
Everything's rusty, I mean...
Yeah, I know.
Corroded.
I mean, in the old days, you know, in British Rail days at Crew Works, for example, where they employed at one time, I think, 7,000 men. I remember painting in that place in 1955. And you had overhead cranes and everything else, and wheel drops.
Yeah.
So an engine would come in one piece, steam in, drop everything, drop the wheels out, take them off, take the boiler off, and in 3 weeks she'd be back in service. This job is probably going to take these
6 or 7 years?
lunatics on this place about 6 or 7 years,
Yeah.
too, because they're volunteers, God bless them, and they're doing it on Sunday afternoons.
Just on Sundays?
Well, probably, because on the weekdays, you see, on the Severn Valley, they're running the railway.
Yeah.
They can't afford the time to stop and do this.
Yes.
They've got to look after the public. And so it does bring it home to you when you see an engine like this, actually, because the public never see this, of course.
I mean, for instance, that bit of equipment there, that, I mean, what would you pay for, what's that, lubricator?
Oh, that reminds me, yes. I paid 12 and 6 for a lubricator. Yeah, yes. The old days, again, when I went to Woodham's Brothers the first time in 1969, and lubricators were all over the engines. Nobody had taken them, you see. And so I pulled one off with the aid of my chums. It was filthy. It was a lump of gunge about that big.
Yeah.
You could hardly even see what it was. We slid it down a plank. It was pouring with rain into the back of my state car. And I drove around to Billy's office, Billy Woodham's office, which was an old guards van body parked beside his Rolls Royce. And I said, I want to pay for this. He said, oh, what is it? He was bored stiff and he didn't want to get wet. And I said, well, come on, I've got to pay for it. He said, well, look, let's see how much it weighs. And he pushed it with a hand and he said, 12 and 6. So I gave him a quid and he counted out the change in the rain. Can you imagine getting one of those for 12 and 6? Not nowadays.
No, no.
This reminds me of Barry's scrapyard.
To anyone who cares about engines, seeing them like this is very sad. But the good news is that all over the country, more and more enthusiasts are giving up their weekends and evenings and are breathing life back into a new age of steam.
On our next Away Day trip, we'll be visiting the Worth Valley Railway Line, setting for the Railway Children. Comedy actor Bernard Cribbins will be taking us along the line next Monday at 3:35.